screencast is about fairy tales and pie. Once upon a time, there were two German professors. They looked into the relationship between similar words in different languages, but they are famous as story collectors. I am talking about the Brothers Grimm. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm had a happy life until their father died. Suddenly, they were sent to school in the north. After that, they went to study law, but when their mother died as well, they became librarians to support their brother and sister. They were passionate about German folklore, and they wanted to preserve the Germans' oral tradition and do research about how words changed their sounds over time. So they started to collect the fairy and folk tales they heard and came in contact with. Their first collection of 86 German fairy stories was called Kinder- und Hausmärchen. It was published in 1812. There were no illustrations and the stories were not child-friendly. The brothers didn't intend the book to be read by children or non-scholars. The stories were cruel and gruesome with no happy ending. The brothers had two opposite personalities. Jacob was introverted and physically stronger. He was the academic. He researched a lot of the folklore and did most of the work on the theories of language and grammar. Wilhelm, on the other hand, was warmer, but he had a weaker health. He was interested in literature. He revised and edited the stories to give them a classic narrative style. At that moment, Europe was experiencing a flowering of children's literature. Illustrated books of tales were very popular in England. The first English translation of the Grimm's collection in 1823 was a huge success. After that, they selected 50 of their most popular tales and softened them. This made the books more appropriate for children. They republished this as a cheaper Kleine Ausgabe in 1925. The Grimm's fairy tales were established as classic children's literature. The collection was the most reprinted work in Germany after Luther's Bible. The Brothers Grimm also had a huge impact on the movies of Walt Disney. While they were collecting folk tales, they were able to investigate phonetic shifts in the German language. This led to one of the most important linguistic laws, namely the Grimm's Law. Most of the research was done by Jacob. He traced the vowel shifts in different European languages, and he discovered that they were all connected to one common root and one common language. His work on linguistics was written down in the Deutsche Grammatik in 1819. In 1838, the brothers began a significant project, the Deutsche Wörterbuch, also known as Der Grimm. They wanted to gather information about the history and usage of every German word. Unfortunately, it took longer than they expected, because they both died during their work. A group of academics completed their work. Finally, it was finished in 1961. The brothers also didn't live to see the founding of the modern German nation-state in 1871. At the moment, more than 6,000 languages are spoken around the world. Almost all languages can be traced back to the 10 main language families. The largest of these families is Proto-Indo-European. Jacob Grimm traced back almost all the languages of Europe to one single ancestor language, the Proto-Indo-European, also known as Pi. The Grimm's Law showed how the consonants of different Indo-European languages relate to each other. For example, there is a relationship between words beginning with a P in Latin or Greek and words beginning with an F in Germanic languages. So pater in Latin becomes father in English. The P becomes an F. We think the single language was spoken more than 5,000 years ago in southern Russia. When tribes migrated, Pi split into dialects, and these developed into separate languages. It wasn't the first language, but is the oldest we have evidence of. The only way of knowing how this language sounded or was written is to look at the oldest written texts. The oldest text so far is from the Old Indic literature, or from India. Here you can see the language tree with the one common root, namely the Proto-Indo-European. So all these languages have one common language, one common root. So you can see English, Dutch, French, Spanish, and so on. All these languages can be traced back to the Proto-Indo-European, also known as Pi. The Tower of Babel. The United Nations isn't the Tower of Babel. Why? Because in the UN, people speak thousands of languages, but there are only 6 official languages in the UN. This is ironic because the UN is supposed to defend the rights of its members, but still they use language imperialism. The members have to speak an official language instead of their own language. Nowadays, the Tower of Babel is under threat. We are obliged to speak a specific language to make ourselves clear. Because of that, many dialects and languages are dying, and with those deaths, we also lose the culture and identity connected with those languages. Now we have come to the end of the screencast. We can conclude that both Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were very important concerning linguistics. Thank you for listening.